to jack the front up using the jack plate on the front of the car, and then put 2 jack stands under the pinch welds. If you don't have an electric impact, loosen the lug nuts while the car's still on the ground before you jack it up. I've got an electric here, so I can do it while it's in the air. Factory lug nuts on the Subaru, a 19mm. I like to put the tire and wheel under the pinch weld of the car, just in case the jack gets knocked off. It will fall on the tire and wheel and not on you. Alright, with the car up in the air and the jack stands, get the wheel off, go inside, turn the wheel all to one side so you can get to this a lot easier. I need to get these 2 caliper mounting bolts out. There's a 14mm head, one here and one here. They go into the slide pins. The slide pins are going to stay in the bracket on this car. Sometimes the slide pin goes all the way through, but not on this car. So the 14mm head. Make sure I got this in the correct direction, going off. This shouldn't be on very tight. That one's loose. More on that one. Take them both out, put them aside or use them. Just be able to work the caliper off like that. It's pretty far out. These pads are pretty worn. Let that rust. Let that rust. Yeah, it's rusted. Let that rest up there. And now I need to get the 2 bracket mounting bolts that are back here. It's kind of hard to see. There's one up here and one down here. They're 19mm. They're what is holding the bracket on here. I can either take the pads out now or just pop them out with this off. It's actually kind of easier sometimes, especially with these little like springy clips it has. So let me get this out first. These are insignificantly tighter. You might need a really long 1/2 inch ratchet, and you'll definitely need like a little wobbly for the top here to get past the strut bolt. But let's see, since I'm going down to tighten, this might be a lot easier. Make sure I'm on there. There it is. Alright, I'm gonna do the other one. I don't need the wobble. Lower. There it is. Should come out by hand at a certain point. That one, put it aside. Gonna reuse it. Of course, that one needs the wobble, but it's loose enough. I'll do it with my fingers. Those are the bolts. They go through the knuckle and they thread into the caliper bracket on both the top and the bottom. And now I can push these pads in, kind of pop them out. Alright, so this rotor is kind of rusted to the hub. I could hit it with a hammer, try to get it off. It's good to put a lug nut on it right now so it doesn't fall off while you're trying to get it off. But I'm going to spray it with some rust penetrant. And there's two holes, right here and right here. In those holes, you can put an 8mm at 1.0 bolts. I think that's what this is. Of course, they're rusty, the holes. Should be able to get them threaded. There it is. Thread them both in. And then doing this by hand, gently work the rotor off. Like I said, you can either get a big hammer and do this, or this way. And you'll see the rotor will start to move. If they get stuck, make sure you do it evenly. It'll start to go. See it? That's it. Nope. And of course, I put the lug nut on there so it wouldn't fall off, and forgot. There we go. Cool. And you can take your bolts off and use them again for something else. Now, this hub's a little rusty. If you're doing this in your driveway, you're not going to have access to like air tools to like whiz it off like a tech would do in a shop, but it's not too big a deal. Just spray a little rust penetrant on it. Like wire brush that you'll need anyways for this job. And you can just brush the stuff off. Just want to make sure the rotor sits flat on there. You're going to take some brake clean, just clean it off. That'll do. You can put a little bit of caliper grease there for the new rotor so it doesn't get too rusty to it. A little bit here, lug nuts. Won't hurt. Don't have to have a ton, just a little coating. Alright, I'll put the new brake rotor on backwards. Give it a spray with brake parts cleaner. Flip it over, put it in place. Throw a lug nut on to hold it. These are OEM replacement rotors I got right from the Subaru dealer. So they're painted black like the factory ones. because they are factory ones. We'll clean the outside of them. Alright, that's the rotor. Now I gotta clean up the caliper bracket. And actually, before I do that, I'm gonna compress the caliper. So you can actually flip it over like this. Clean some of this gunk out of here. Don't want to push too much dirt back into the caliper here. This is a Northeast car, so it's seen some salt and it's a little bit rusty on certain parts. Take one of the old pads here before I throw it on the ground. You'll need a caliper compressor that can do 2 pistons. Get that lined up. Now, if you didn't put the brake pad in here, these would have to go all the way into the cylinder here, so you'd be threading them a long time. So it's easier just to put the brake pad there. And make sure to socket to fit those. You just do this evenly, and they should go in nice and easy. If they don't, you can crack the bleed screw, but you technically don't need to do that. And if they go in nice and smooth, that means the caliper is not seized. But really, if they're hard to push in, you may need a new caliper because it might be seized. This car is still fairly new and relatively low miles. This is about 45,000 miles of city and highway driving. There you go. Once that bottom's out, that's it. Back them up. And the pistons are compressed. They should basically be flat with the rubber seals. Alright, since I don't have new clips, I need to clean these caliper clips. They're stainless. I'm just going to do the same thing for both sides. Spray them with a little brake parts cleaner. Take a wire brush. Get in here. This little spring clip kind of makes it annoying, but just clean them up as best I can. That's kind of it. If I had new ones, I'd replace them, but for whatever reason, even though I was doing a front brake job and I bought these parts directly from the Subaru dealer, they didn't upsell me on any hardware. I don't know why. Because I just assumed that the new brake pads would come with hardware. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. And you would think that if a place sells brakes and they do work on certain cars all the time, they would know to sell you all the parts that you need. At least that's the way I used to do it when I worked at a parts department. I would learn what parts certain cars needed to do certain jobs and remind the customer that they should buy them. And if they don't, they don't. But usually they'd come back and end up buying them anyways. But you can reuse these, it's not a big deal. And the next thing I want to do, I'll pull these slide pins out. I'll leave the rubber part in there. Pull them out one at a time. And I'm going to put some grease on them and put them back in. So using the black Silglide grease. Keeps these from seizing up. Do the same for the other one. That's it. Alright, put the caliper back up. Grab one of the bolts. And I'll have to kind of fiddle with my hand. Figure out where that threads in. Got it on the first try. It doesn't always happen. Don't tighten these yet with a wrench. Just do them by hand. I'm going to torque them down anyways. So you really don't need to kill yourself with a wrench here. I mean, unless you don't want to turn by hand, you can just do it lightly. But they should thread in pretty well like that. So. Alright, now I'm going to leave them just like that and come back and torque them. And the brake pad's a little squirt of brake parts cleaner. I'm running out here, but you don't need to soak them. Let that dry. Now I'm going to put a little grease here and here, and the squealer is going to go down towards the bottom. And this shim was on the inside, so I'm going to put it back on the inside with the squealer at the bottom. And these little springs and the squealer thing make it a little tricky to get in. Kind of start with the bottom part, push it in. That one's alright. I think the front one was trickier. Again, the same. You don't need a lot, just enough. Make sure that when you put brake pads in, you follow the curved part. You don't try to put it in backwards. I've seen people try to do that. So this thing here, the squealer's got to go in past this spring tab, which is kind of annoying. So I had to like push it in like this, and then kind of work it past the bar here. Stuck on that. See if I can get that to stay. Yeah, just kind of, you have to like just squeeze it by like that. And of course, it popped out at the bottom, I think. Yeah. The other side was tricky as well, so gonna get past that. Come all the way in. Grease all over the place. So you'll probably struggle with this. The other side was about as difficult. There. Just kind of manipulated it around and got it in. Now this collapsed. Make sure you're not twisting the hose. This should go on like this. Make sure you're past the slide pins. Yep. Like that. Thread the bolts back in. Again, make sure they go in and thread them by hand. Now I'm going to torque the bracket bolts, and then these bolts here. These bracket bolts are 88.5, so I'm just going to do 88. That's it. I'll do the bottom one. Make sure I'm on it. Okay, that's those. Now the uppers are 19.9, so I'm just going to do 20 foot-pounds. I should use the right socket. Get this a little tighter by hand. That's it. Alright, so that's pretty much it. The next step, you can turn the wheel the other way, do the other side, exact same, just in a mirror. You can take this off, put your wheel back on, take the car off jack stands when you're all done with the brakes, put it down, and then before you drive it or even turn the car on, take your hand and gently press the brake pedal. And you're going to push these pistons back out so they meet the rotor with the pads, and that way when you start the car you should have a pretty solid pedal. It won't go to the floor. So yeah, I'm going to turn the wheel back forward. I already did the other side. Put my wheel back on. I think the torque is like 76 foot-pounds for lug nuts. Make sure those are torqued once you've got it down on the ground, and you're good to go. That's how you do the front brakes on a 2018 Crosstrek. I'm just using very light. I just want to get them seated because I'm going to torque them when it's on the ground.